The infamous villain of Season 2 of Titans has returned in this week's episode. So we got to talk about Titans Episode 4. But before I jump into the episode, welcome to NonStopAntonio, where I talk about everything nerdy. If you like content just like this, hit the subscribe button for more, and I hope you enjoy this video. In this episode, we find a lot about Mother Mayhem. We find out her backstory, where she came from, and why she's after Sebastian. Which was really interesting because we find out back in 1996 that she already had her magic powers. She was already doing magic shit, causing people to off themselves, making people's lives easier while she worked with them, and being generally not a good person, but also not a bad person at the same time. But that all changes when the organization finds her. The same organization that was bringing back Trigon in Season 1 and the Titans had to deal with. Same ones where they burned down their asylum, which will come back later in this episode. But we find out that Mother Mayhem, in 1997, after she joins, ends up falling into Trigon's arm, per se, as she falls into a pit and believes in him. And I can't tell if she hit the ground and survived, or if they landed on something, because they looked a little beat up, but they climbed up the ladder anyways. Then she gets knocked down by her friend, who wants to be the bride of Trigon, which ends up failing her because Mother Mayhem is the chosen one, and drinks some blood that I guess impregnates her with the son of Trigon, Sebastian. In the end, Raven has a brother, and his name is Sebastian Blood, which we finally now get to meet. And it's very interesting that they're tied together this way, rather than being the bride and groom, how it was in the comics. It's interesting that Dick Grayson, who was trained by the world's greatest detective, doesn't even consider for a second that the asylum is possibly still going and the organization isn't completely dead, because they burned it in Season 1. Like anyone else would assume that, oh, if one person lived, there's a good chance that the organization kept going, but he just can't process that, and it kind of bothered me because Dick Grayson wouldn't think like that. I like how Rachel realizes that it's the organization that's behind this, because when she's talking to Sebastian, he says Atherath when she's asking him what did Mother Mayhem try to get him to say, and she says the second word and stops him before the third, because she knows those are the words from the cult of Trigon. So it's very interesting to see what's going on here and how it's all tying together, because this season is heavily tied to Season 1 and the events that took place during that. So in classic fashion, the Titans have to go off and see the asylum to make sure that it's actually gone, because, well, if they don't check it out for themselves, how will they ever know? They go there and it's a Super Super Mart, which is obviously a front because it's not on their maps. It just seems off. Who calls the thing Super Super Mart? It just seems too obvious. I love while they're making their way over there, because Jinx is just poking fun at Connor the whole time, because he's talking about how Superman is afraid of magic. He's weak to magic, and Connor's like, he wouldn't be scared. He's not weak to anything. He's the strongest, trying to defend his father. And I just found their little back and forth was really fun, because Superboy doesn't understand that Superman has weakness to magic, which is actually one of his biggest weaknesses aside from kryptonite. And it comes back around later in the episode, but we'll get there. They were right to go check the old asylum because they find a doorway that leads into a big underground building, which was unaffected by the fire when they burnt it down back in Season 1. And Mother Mayhem lets them go in there because of the fact that Sebastian needs to learn his heritage, and if he doesn't go down there, he will never fully understand what's going on. But while they're looking in there, Corey finds a creepy storybook, which has a prophecy in it, which shows clearly Starfire on the ground because she's wearing her suit, a possible Raven, and then she says, oh, this is us, and its entire team dead, but none of the pictures really match the characters, so it might not actually be them. However, Starfire is still connected to this, so the whole prophecy that's going on is connected to all the Titans and their team, and I'm really interested in seeing how this plays out, because, again, everyone's connected to this prophecy: Gar, Raven, Dick, Corey, and I'm not sure if Tim or Superboy is really connected to this. I think they're just pawns added to it, but the other characters are, because they were all in Season 1 as well. And while they go down there, Mother Mayhem sends off her Hellhounds, which were honestly quite disappointing, because while the Titans are finding out about Mother Mayhem and finding out about all the Sebastian and how it's all tied together, the Hellhounds come to fight them, and it's just a bunch of dudes wearing retail clothing, holding like gardening equipment to fight, which is just, like with a show like this, you think they could have just made it a little bit better, made them look a little bit more grotesque, made them look more Hellhoundish, or made them look more devilish because of the fact that they were undead. They just looked like normal people. They could have made them look more undead or something along the lines. And it just seemed too boring. And the fight itself was kind of fun. You got Superboy knocking people over. I was yelling at Beast Boy changing to an animal multiple times because I just wanted to see him change. because he hasn't done that yet. We're 4 episodes in. Raven ends up cutting a dude's head off once Jinx lets them know that it's zombies, go for the head. And my first thought was, after that, is Connor could have just knocked all their heads off in an instant there, and I don't get why they didn't do it. They really depowered him and made him weaker during that scene, even though they really didn't have to, and they could have just utilized his power to help them. But I guess that was setting up the next part, where they fight a zombieified Deathstroke. So Deathstroke is back, but not in the way any of us thought he'd be back, and it was very disappointing because I was really hoping that he was alive. And I guess if they brought back a live Deathstroke, they would have to deal with the fact that it took so long for the Titans to feed him in the second season that it wouldn't make sense for him to come back and then be able to take him out like no problem. But like bringing him back undead is cool. They should have just left him in prison and brought him back in a future season where you could have had Jericho and Rose come back and help there. And it's just, I don't like that they killed off his character in season 2. I was never a fan of that, and I even hate him more now that he's confirmed dead. Except it did teach us that Connor gets too cocky, and then the magic knife stabs him and he actually gets hurt. Because, again, Superman's weakness is magic, so Connor's weakness is also magic. That's going to make him think twice before going into any fight against the magic, because he could easily die now. And it's something he's not used to because he's so used to being powerful compared to everyone else. During that scene, it was fun to watch Nightwing versus Deathstroke again, even though it was a dead Deathstroke. And during this whole section, too, I was like, why aren't you guys wearing your freaking costumes? Like, I get it, they're trying to be inconspicuous, but they could have put it on and then went down in the hole after they investigated the Super Super Mart. And I don't get why none of them are ever wearing their costumes. Like, in the first episode, in the first 2 episodes, they wore their costumes and I was happy. And then after that, they just stopped wearing them. I'm like, guys, you are superheroes. Wear your costumes. Wear your costumes. And I did like how Jinx got taken by the dead Deathstroke, pretending to be Sebastian. And I think she's going to be a lot of fun. Her character seems like a lot of fun already, and I really like her. And I like how she takes the gun. She's like, I'm going to sell it. Because it is Deathstroke's gun. I do look forward to finding out, though, if Rose and Jericho do come back, and then the Titans fill them in about their dead father. Or if they find out that their father is dead in a van and they find the body and they figure out what's going on and then they go and meet the Titans. Something like that. I just want to see returning characters from previous seasons that are Titans characters. Like, I get it, the team's already pretty big, but we did have previous team members that could always come back. I'm still waiting for a Flash and a Red Arrow. So one of these days I'll get what I want. But then they all go back to Star Labs, which was interesting because they actually dropped a couple big names. Well, they dropped Superman and they dropped John Constantine. Because Bernard is talking about how no one's broken into Star Labs and it's very secure because both those characters tried and couldn't. So you got Magic and really super powered trying to get in, and they couldn't. The one thing I wish they did was reference which Magic person put whatever spell on Star Labs so the Magic users couldn't get in, because John Constantine is really powerful, and it must have been someone else really powerful to make sure that he couldn't get in. And the only way to do that would be with some sort of magic. I'm hoping that they kind of explain a little bit more about that, because just saying that John Constantine couldn't get in doesn't really mean much if we don't find out who made it so he couldn't get in. And the whole point about going to Star Labs was to lock up Sebastian so that the Blood Moon could expire and that the prophecy can't come true. It's interesting because obviously something's going to come true because he's going to get out. We saw him in his full-blown costume in some promotional art while they're promoting the season. So he's going to become the full Sebastian Blood character soon. So what they want to do is not going to go out well. I am interested to seeing next episode what Raven's going to talk to him about, because she's staying there with him. And then when Connor pukes up that snake in the bathroom, he's been infected, and I think he's going to be controlled by Mother Mayhem, and she's going to use him to break Sebastian out and turn him into Sebastian Blood and get his full power. It's just going to be really interesting how they tie this together. This season's been good. I always have my discrepancies about what I like and what I don't. I still really like seeing these characters on screen because I like all of them and I love the Titans comics. So being able to see these characters in full live action is always great, even though I don't always agree with what they're doing with the characters. What do you think of this episode, and what do you think is going to happen going forward? Let me know down in the comments, and if you watch this video all the way through, leave a like, hit the sub button for more, because I'm going to be covering Titans till it ends. And on top of it all, I always do Marvel and DC breakdowns for almost all the DC and Marvel shows and movies. So there's always new content coming out. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.